beginning, because I remember a neighbor calling me when the World Trade Center towers were being attacked, and said, Trump TV, and I turned it on, and as you may remember, they showed over and over the buildings coming down, and I could see the buildings weren't falling down, they were blowing up. It was obvious they were blowing up, and so I've always wondered that. And the other thing that made me think it was a hoax was that if the official story is correct, and a few Saudi Arabians pulled this off, it's the most massive government failure in world history. There's never been such a coordinated, total failure of every aspect of the government. All the intelligence agencies, NORAD, air traffic control, airport security, the Pentagon, everything failed.
But such a perfect execution by guys directed from caves. Doctor,
wait. Let me get to the real point. The real point is that if this was actually true and happened, the President, the National Security Council, the CIA, the Congress would all be demanding to know how in the world could this have happened? How could so many people fail? They would have insisted immediately on an investigation just to find out how our systems could so totally fail, and heads would have rolled. Somebody would have been held accountable. And yet they resisted all investigations, and no heads ever rolled for what the government says is the most massive failure of government in human history. So these things make me suspicious. And then what also makes me suspicious is all this hypocrisy we see. All of a sudden now we're concerned about humanitarian death in Libya. Well, why aren't we concerned about all the ones we inflict? I mean, we wrecked Iraq for, 7 or 8 years that we've been wrecking Afghanistan. What is it now? For almost 10 years. We never say a word when the Israelis wreck Lebanon and wreck Gaza. We don't say a word about all the deaths in Bahrain or Yemen. We routinely kill people in Pakistan with drones. We force the Pakistani army to attack its own people, its own tribes. And all of a sudden now we have humanitarian concerns in Libya. So it doesn't really make any sense, you know what I mean? And you can just see it doesn't make any sense. And so you figure that there's some agenda going on and they're not telling us what it is.
Yes, sir. Do me a favor. You're coming through pretty good, but perhaps if you're using a headset or a regular phone, just speak directly into it, Dr. Paul Greg Roberts, because we really want to hear what you have to say. But, I mean, here's a piece of evidence. Al-Qaeda leader dined at the Pentagon just months after 9/11 while he was a wanted man on the news. And Anwar al-Awlaki is involved in all these domestic attacks. He's on the news menacing us. We're now told he's the head guy under bin Laden. Shouldn't there be an investigation on why he was hanging out at the Pentagon, having dinner with the Secretary of the Army and the top brass, if he's such a deadly al-Qaeda commander?
Well, you would think so, yes. You know, another giveaway, Alex, I think we've talked about this before, is all of the terror cases. All of the domestic terror cases, they're all orchestrated by the FBI. So why does the FBI have to go to such extreme lengths to ensnare people who are not inclined to be terrorists into some fabricated terrorist act so that they can actually have a real case? I mean, if we're overrun by terrorists, you'd think they would be everywhere, and the government wouldn't have to be spending all this time and money trying to create terrorists out of people who aren't. And every one of these cases that have gone to court have been terrorism plots organized by the FBI. So, again, this tells you that there's really no al-Qaeda. That the FBI has to go out and mimic it. So we know the results of war and police state. So we have to figure that's two of the agendas.
Yes, sir. Shifting gears into your latest article dealing with Obama taking America to new heights of hypocrisy, you've already hit on some of that, but in my 16 and a half, 17 years studying this 24/7, and looking at it, I've never seen, as soon as you think Clinton's Orwellian, and then Bush's Orwellian, and now Obama, they say, don't call it a war, it's a kinetic military action. Don't call dropping DU bombs military. Now we learn they did arm the rebels beforehand. Al-Qaeda's involved. Now they've got the Marines saying, yeah, we're going to land, and the British Marines, but it's going to be backing up the rebels, so it's not a military action, and there's not going to be a ground war, but we are going to be on the ground. I mean, it's beyond 1984. Why are they so arrogant now?
Because they've gotten away with it. No one's been held accountable. You know, the Bush regime, well, Clinton got away with it in Serbia, right? Bombing people. And then the Bush regime got away with flagrant violations of statutory U.S. law. I mean, it wasn't something simple like sex with an intern. I mean, he created massive numbers of felonies under the law. And so Bush should have been arrested and prosecuted and imprisoned. And any number of the members of the administration, they're all criminals under American law. And yet there wasn't even any protest about it. You know, the violation of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act is a felony for every offense. It's a felony. So how many millions of wiretaps did they make? You know, torture is a felony under United States law. And yet Bush can write in his autobiography or his memoirs or whatever that he ordered it. And that he would, was proud to do it. And so if there's no accountability, they can just do whatever. And they now use words in ways that are just obviously such distortion. If we now have them, we're going to have troops on the ground, but it's not troops on the ground. So
it's incredible. I mean, you study history as you've done. This megalomania always sets in, and I think that will be their undoing, is that they've gone so power mad, and pride goes before a fall, hubris goes before a fall. The problem is this 1,000-foot edifice is going to fall on us when it falls. How do you see this ending? And then let's go through some of the hypocrisy and what you think their end game is.
I don't know what their end game is, and I don't understand why they're taking these massive risks with the economy, with the dollar. You know, the whole thing could explode at any time, and unless they have some kind of, I don't think they've got the whole world under their thumb. So I don't know why they don't see the risk. You know, we have these massive budget deficits that are getting worse because there's no recovery, and there's no way to finance them except by printing money. Well, how long can you print a new $1.5 trillion every year before the dollar disappears as a currency? You can't do that very long. It's just, and if they say, oh, we're going to stop printing the money and we're going to take all the money back out, which is what Bernanke said, well, they can't do that without sending the interest rates, off into the universe somewhere. I mean, the whole economy would just collapse.
Well, Doctor,
I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing, what they're not thinking, unless it's some kind of agenda we don't know about that makes sense of all this, but I can't figure out what it would be.
Well, Doctor, I mean, you were the guy who ran the Treasury Department, the head of policy. You're listed by many major publications as one of the top 10 living economists. Stuff you predicted 5-6 years ago on this show is now happening. The monetization of debt is accelerating. All of this is happening. Inflation is rearing its head in some areas, but the overall depression is putting the brakes on that. And now the meltdown of Europe into Portugal, Spain is beginning. I mean, where does this end?
Well, in catastrophe. You see, but look, Alex, there's already been massive inflation. Food prices haven't reflected it yet, but the cereal grains have gone up tremendously, 30, 40, 50, 100%, some of them. When that works its way through the food processing companies, everybody's going to see big jumps in prices. And when that hits, the first time they can no longer hide the inflation in the way they rig the consumer price index. The first time is really a sign of inflation, what do you think is going to happen to interest rates? Because all the bonds are so highly priced now, the interest rates are practically zero. And a lot of people remaining wealth is in bonds because they know the stock market is being driven by money creation. Well, once those interest rates move up, the bond prices are going to collapse, and whatever's left of private wealth will be ruined. So I don't know. I don't think there's any fault, and we could say, well, the agenda is to destroy everything, but why would people with power want to destroy the basis of their power? So I can't believe that's it either, and it may just be what you said. It's hubris. It's belief that they're omnipotent and so powerful that nothing they do can come back to bite them. Maybe that's the craziness. Or it's just the short-term, greed-driven, profit-driven oligarchies. You know, there are very few ruling economic elites. It's Wall Street, the military security complex, the oil industry. They may all be focused on such short-run profits. We're going to steal everything we can, and we're going to be rich. And maybe they think they can do that and get out of the dollar before it goes. But if you look at all those profits all those people have, they try to get out of the dollar. That's like China and Japan and OPEC trying to get out of the dollar at the same time. So it just can't happen. I just don't know, Alex. I have no idea other than how do you avoid the catastrophe?
Well, they knew this Ponzi scheme would lead to this, and so they're racing to get as much as they can before it collapses. And George Soros, as I'm sure you know, in 4 days is going to be, or 5 days, is going to be meeting back at Bretton Woods, openly calling for a new international order. He's got all these bigwigs coming in. So I think they plan to pose as the saviors and bring in a new level of bubble. But many economists I've talked to just say that things are still so based in U.S. bonds that you can't transition quickly to something new because it will radically deteriorate quickly as well.
Yes, I don't think they can transition. And the reason I don't think they can, I don't think China will cooperate. I don't think Brazil will cooperate. I don't think Russia will cooperate. I just don't see how they can transition. And I don't think you can create a new world order by causing everybody to lose confidence in you. If we wanted to do something like that, we should have behaved quite differently and made everybody feel secure and confident, and that our leadership made sense and was sound, and that people could understand what we were doing. But instead, we've had all these senseless wars, a massive cost, resulting in massive deficits that can't be financed except by printing money. The whole world knows this. So I just, we have the puppet states of Europe. We can get them to do what we want. We have the puppet state of Canada and Australia. We've been trying to create a few puppet states out of former constituent parts of the Soviet Union, such as Georgia and the Ukraine. But that's not enough. And we're in the process, it appears, of losing some of our Middle Eastern puppet states. I mean, I don't think the CIA is behind all of these revolts in all of these countries.
No, they're trying to steer them. But let me throw this point in at you because I think it backs up your point about it being hubris. And they think they're in control, but they're really not in control. And I think that's evidenced by Fukushima. They've now had complete meltdown at Reactor 2. It's melted down through the floor. It could blow up like Chernobyl anytime. Many physicists, nuclear physicists we've had on have said this is already far worse than Chernobyl. And our government says it's no problem. The Japanese government, it turns out, has been covering things up. Why did they build it on a fault line? Why did they store the spent rods on top of the reactors? I mean, that's another example.